All right, here we go for round two. See if we can't get this right a second time. Well, get it right the first time on our second try. So, I'm TK. It's TK and Drinks. We got an episode of What's the Story Going On, which is my quasi-weekly interview series where I interview a mead maker, either commercial or homebrew, or somebody that's involved in the mead industry in some way, shape, or form, and bring you some information. Well, let them bring you information. I usually got some questions for them and all that stuff. So follow me over on my YouTube channel, TK and Drinks. That's where I'll be posting this afterwards. It'll still be here on my Instagram channel, but I got a ton of other videos over there too. I got review videos. I got more interview videos. I got everything that you need that's TK and Drinks related. So go follow me there. Hit me up on Facebook. Give me a follow here. If you're not already following me, you stumbled across this in some other way, shape, or form. So yeah, so I'm going to be interviewing tonight on my episode like 24 or whatever it is. I can't remember. Right now I kind of lost track. I'll be interviewing Mr. Tony Qualls from Manic Meadery there in Indiana. Actually, I was just pulling them up here on the old laptop and see if we can't find out exactly where they're at there. I don't have any of their bottles, unfortunately. Crown Point, Indiana. That's right, Crown Point, Indiana. So if you're not aware of who Tony is, obviously he's a owner, head brewmaster, flavor connoisseur, and everything pretty much technical going on there at Manic. He heads that up. He developed the Sugarland Mead Festival, which I believe was last year, or sorry, the Sugar Belt, not Sugarland. Sugar Belt Mead Festival, which kicked off last year, or this summer, which was, I guess, the last one was this summer, which was the first year of that there in, I think they held it in Ohio, somewhere there in Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, in that, they call that the Sugar Belt. So he put that all together and got that going, and that, I guess, from what I understand, we'll be asking him some questions about that. Really helped out some meaderies, get some exposure and whatnot, because I know there was upwards of 20 different vendors there, which for a first time mead thing that seemingly from the outside anyway, again, asking some questions about that from the outside, seemed like it was kind of just put together on short notice, not to say haphazardly put together, but it was put together on a again, seemingly short notice. So asking him about all that and whatnot. Still finishing our Danksworth from earlier, and we're gonna, again, hopefully got us all squared away with Tony. He should be here anytime. We'll be doing, living in Arizona where the time zones don't change. I'm from Washington, where obviously I used to have to deal with the bi-yearly shift, but now I'm in Arizona. I haven't had to deal with that in about 15 years or so. It's been nice. I forgot about it. And it wasn't even really until today I was at work and had to deal with somebody who was in another time zone than me. I was like, oh, fuck, that's a thing again. That's right, I forgot about that. And then here we are, Tony forgot about it too, and we're all jacked up. But here we go, and it looks like Tony is in the building. Manic Meadery. Let's give them an invite. Go. Happens. Maybe it'll join, maybe it won't. There we go. Oh, what's happening, Tony?
What up?
Man, good to see you. I totally got all jacked up with this whole time zone, time change, not changing times bullshit.
Well, at least you reminded me.
Are you there?
Losing you?
Looks like you're frozen. Yep, a little bit.
I'm not frozen here. Yeah?
Oh,
yeah,
there you
better?
go. Now that's much better. Much better.
Okay.
There we go.
Had to move locations.
I appreciate it, my man. Oh, watch out. Got the dog moving my camera. Hitting the tripod. All right, there we go. So thanks for joining with me, even though we got all this technical baloney out of the way.
Yeah, man, for sure. It's a pleasure to be here. I had fun with you at Mazer Cup.
Yeah.
It was great to get out and drink some mead and learn some things, see what we figured out the last year during all these lockdowns. It's always nice, and you don't take for granted the time you get to hang out.
Yeah, and you think about it in the grand scheme of things, a year and a half isn't really that long a time, but in short term, man, it feels so good to get out there and actually be with people and congregate in that type of setting again. It was, I think, a much needed venture.
Yeah, definitely. I look forward to Mesa Cup every year. I get to test what I learned the previous year with judging and hanging out and tasting everyone's libations, talking to them about it. So I know it's smaller than it used to be, but people who really, come out, they sacrifice time away from their businesses and family, and I learn a lot from everybody, and I have a great time. I kind of seals up a Mead year for me on the calendar. So I think this is my 5th year being at Mesa Cup, and yeah, it was a good one.
You guys took away some hardware this year, didn't you?
Yeah, we took a first place for in the barrel age category, sweet barrel age with Orange Blossom, which is a Chardonnay barrel aged Orange Blossom mead. The specific honey is a Florida Orange Blossom honey, and we make a lot of that mead, and we usually sparkle it for like a Pétion style in our tap room. This one we opted to sweeten a little more and put in a Chardonnay barrel as an experiment, and I really like that mead. I'm pretty stoked that it took first. I could see it taking first. I think it was warranted with that particular mead. I had a few other ones in there that didn't even place that I thought were great too. But the fact that they chose that one made me pretty happy because it's a traditional mead, which I think is important for the mead world to put on some sort of a pedestal sometimes. We have a lot of fruit and adjuncts in our meads these days, so just expressing the varietal honey and putting it in barrels is something I get real excited about, and so that meant a lot. We also took another medal I'm really happy about is a dry traditional category, is that dry monofloral for our Tupelo off dry, and that made me happy. It's not a style that pays the bills, so to speak, and I hope it does in the future. I'm definitely in the dry and off dry meads. They're very difficult to do, sort of like the Pilsner or the mixed firm of the beer world, and I'm just happy that we got recognized, took a third in that one. That made me happy. It's not really something we do a whole lot of, but I do really enjoy it, and I hope that it catches on a little more as the mead world progresses. And then I believe we had 2 other third places. One was Integration, and I believe that was Sweet Melamel. And then the last one was 3rd place for Apple of a Sizer Batch 2, which is a Sizer aged in a bourbon barrel with maple syrup and vanilla. And that was our buddy Brandon Pope, who does he does all of our label design. It's a collaboration with him specifically to commemorate the birth of his son, and that's pretty cool. So he's got the artwork on there with his boy and his hand and his tattoo and stuff. So it's pretty neat to see him get a medal for that. So yeah, I know. Along with back with that Tupelo Blossom, Brandon Benninger, are pretty much our only mead maker besides Rob. Rob and Brandon basically are two all-star employees. They switch around between tap room and production, so we don't have a whole lot of people making mead yet. And Brandon, I know he had made that Tupelo Blossom. He had a huge part in making that mead, so that's kind of a Mesa Cup medal for Brandon too. So that's pretty exciting, especially since he can't enter his home stuff now. So yeah, overall, super stoked about it. It's not all about the medal; it's about the experience. So I'll take the medal. So
Awesome. Yeah. The only one of those I didn't get to try was the Apple of my Pizer, which I was really disappointed because I heard so much good clamor about that one.
nice.
But I'm sure I'll get to try an iteration of it in the future.
Yeah, we'll Sizer season's coming up for us usually in March, so we'll be rolling a lot more of them. And we have an expansion we're doing in a new undisclosed location in the next month. We acquired a space that's going to triple our production space. Sizers, cider, and stuff with apples is definitely on the agenda list to increase production. So certainly be doing more of that.
Awesome. So yeah, and when we were there at Mesa Cup, I definitely think I heard you wax prolific at least one time or another about the importance of traditionals, and I share that. Either not as deep-seated as yours, but I share the concept of the traditional is the important thing because it's what's really characterizing the honey and lets the honey be the star of the show, and as many different varieties as we can get out there and try, as I can get out and try is huge to me. So
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
like they said, doing a dry one well is even harder. I would have figured, it would be easier to do it dry because you just have to, ferment it to the dry and boom, you're good to go. But I'm sure it's a much more painstaking process than just, turn the keys on and let it go.
Yeah, the major thing is the less you do sometimes, the less you have to hide behind as well. So while we all like a lot of residual sugar and a bunch of honey and dense fruit and adjuncts and oak, sometimes a lot of booze and big flavors. It's not easy to hide flaws with that style either. It's not to say anything about that. Um, but when you really respect the monofloral honey, especially when you're not just using a lot of raw honey on the back end and you get a lot of flavors, it's just more of a nuanced thing, and it's more subtle. And I think it's going to catch on. I mean, mead is in a growth phase, and we've talked about it, and I'm really excited for where it's going. I think it's still going to take some time, and we're sussing out the shape of it. We borrow a lot from the beer world. We borrow a lot from the wine world. Even Mazer Cup is BJCP guidelines, which is great. My goal in the future is to make mead its own thing. It can still work in concert with the other industries, but I do want to really make it stand out. So to your point, yes, respecting the honey, that's the number one thing that makes mead mead. We use honey. It's 51% or more, more than half the fermentable sugar coming from honey. You should taste the honey, and it should contribute to a main part of it. And there's nothing more of a contributing factor when you're just doing a traditional mead and just respecting the monofloral. So yeah, I really appreciate it. And I taste, dozens and dozens of varieties of honeys every year, and it's just really fun to taste them from raw form all the way through fermentation. And when you can get different flavors from fermenting drier, and you have something a little more quaffable and easy to drink, that you can maybe have a glass or two of rather than a few sips. I kind of like that style, so I think it's a good addition to the mead world, and definitely, will become more and more respected as time goes on, and people start chasing different flavor profiles from the different monofloral honeys that are available.
Definitely. And to your point of, trying all these different honeys in their raw form versus their pre-fermented versus post-fermented form. I've only made one personally. It was a mesquite blossom. And I used a Kveik yeast, and I didn't get it up to a high enough temperature to bring out those like really powerful like floral notes and stuff that come out when you get up like 104, 105 degrees. And I'm just thinking about this, like, all these different honey characteristics and all these different characteristics from the yeast that you can get, and you're mixing all these combinations together. It's like, to me, that's like a whole universe all in of itself before you even start to get adding fruit and other adjuncts in there. To me, it's just mind blowing in and of itself. And I'm just so intrigued by its uniqueness in that way.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, especially when you're talking about yeast expression. A lot of yeast, people worry, I do a fair amount of help. I help out when I can, and I try to learn what I can. I try to contribute when I can, answer questions when I can. And let's say, you see groups like Modern Mead Makers on Facebook, which, I'm privileged to be a moderator on. And, the questions through the years focus so much around yeast and what yeast should I use and contributing factors in yeast. And I've experimented with a lot of yeast and a lot of data, got a lot of data from people who have experimented with more yeast than me. And it never becomes more prevalent what a yeast can do when you simplify the recipe. So yeah, you were exactly right. You start simplifying and breaking it down into honey and water form, then the yeast makes much more of a difference. It's a larger contributor to the flavor profile of your final product. So a traditional fermented with ale yeast as opposed to champagne yeast is going to have completely different flavor profile. And it's really fun actually matching yeast with specific honeys, where it could be, it's less important in my opinion in a high residual sugar fruit bomb, where you're really looking for it not to stall, you're looking for it to be stable, and you're looking for it to get the job done. And at the end of the day, you're going to taste a lot of the fruit, and the esters are going to be a little bit more muted or lost, whereas in a traditional light body traditional, you're gonna really see a lot of color from the yeast. So yeah, like you said, it just brings out a whole other world for you to experiment with.
So having just, taken a medal for a dry traditional, what kind of advice would you offer to somebody who's trying to make a dry traditional of their own? You doing it up.
Well, I made several. In fact, ironically, you mentioned mesquite. I say coincidentally, I guess. You mentioned mesquite. It was one of the first ones I ever did at home years ago. It's a great honey. And we actually was the first one we did commercially. It was a mesquite blossom. And I think it's a fantastic mead or honey to use for a dry traditional. As far as, it really depends on what you want. I think as far as a judge and a mead maker goes, I would say I can tell you what the mistakes are people make. A little easier to avoid. Yeah, to avoid the mistakes would be, I think starting with a little softer alcohol content helps. I'm a booze hound. I really do like higher attenuating, higher alcohol content meads. But when you don't have the sugar to balance it necessarily, and you don't have the fruit with the acid to balance it necessarily, and depending on your tannin structure, you can't really get as high ABV, especially if you're on a time crunch like we are sometimes in commercial. Can't let it sit around for 4 years. And usually the only balancer you're using in a dry mead is going to be the main balancer is going to be the tannin. And that's another thing you can get out of hand. I think folks tend to over oak certain dry meads a little bit, especially when it's a light, delicate honey. I love oak. I think it's a nuance to use, but it's not like wine where it can take on oak for 2 years in a barrel. And then it's softened it and smoothed it and integrated the tannins. Sometimes it can step on the nuance of the honey. So I think that folks tend to, when they're new at it, they might do a little too much. So my suggestion is to be as simple as possible and, shoot for something lower alcohol, 10 or 11% even, ferment that dry, let it go, and then treat it really well. Keep it away from too much oxygen and let it hang out and clear very nicely, give it its time, taste it, and then decide if you want to maybe add a little bit touch of honey, a little touch of oak, and maybe do some adjustments. You're rarely going to need acid. I don't really like acid adjustments in a dry mead. However, there's folks that have done it and done it well, but it plays more into with fruit and such, and when you get a little bit of higher sugar concentration. But I don't do any acid adjustments in any dry mead. This Tupelo that I did that we got the medal on, it's what I call a naked trad. It was really a traditional. By most stretches, it did have nutrients involved. In this case, I use Fermento. I do 2 nutrient additions in traditionals. I split them in half. The yeast on this one, I have to look. I don't quite remember, but I'm pretty sure we use a lot of DV10 for a basic traditional base mead, but I think this one was QA23. I've been using a lot of ale yeast lately. This Tupelo blossom was made over a year ago, but yeah, I say shoot for something 10, 11%, where the alcohol is not gonna hinder the flavor of the honey, and then start wait till it dries out. If it dries out at 997, 996, add a little bit of honey in a bench trial. See if you want to make it a little sweeter. You can still have a dry mead, and put a little bit extra honey at the end after you stabilize it, of course, and that can have some great great results. I like them bone dry. The Tupelo was not bone dry. It actually stopped. It didn't complete fermentation, and I left it be, and that's kind of what that one story is. We have a sweeter version that we added some honey on the back end, but this one is residual sugar. That's the only sugar left is residual in that Tupelo. And so I just say less is more when you're starting. Don't try to get too crazy with adjuncts, alcohol content, and all the other things that you might have to dial back to really respect the delicate nature of the honey.
You talking cubes, staves, spirals, barrel? I mean, preference
anything
for,
really. Obviously there's going to be a huge difference between fresh spirals or cubes or a newly toasted, medium plus American oak barrel than, let's say, like a neutral barrel that's been used many, many times. You're going to get more micro-oxidative effects rather than, toasty notes and the vanillin and the coconut flavors of American oak or the cherry flavors of and vanilla flavors of the French oak. So yeah, I think it's very important if you're going to use something that's new, especially in a light mead, like if it's a new fresh cube, fresh stave, a newer barrel, a newer toasted barrel, then yeah, I think you need to be real easy on how long you leave it in there and taste it often so you don't have too much contact time. I think the quality is important. There's great cubes out there. There's chips I don't tend to prefer. I think they're inconsistent, so I avoid chips. I like cubes because they're symmetrical and I know the surface area and I can dose them very well. Chips are just erratic. There's really no rhyme or reason to the shape, and they tend to toast them in whatever way, and you have no way of knowing. Spirals are great. Barrels can be great. There's bad barrels though, and there's bad cubes, and there's bad spirals. So, I say spend the money and just do your homework and get something that is from a quality manufacturer or maker, and find out what's worked for other people before you spend the money. But I mean, the other thing I like is spirit barrels, but I get in the higher ABV stuff. I had a few other meads that were aged in spirit barrels and traditionals entered in that same competition there, Mazer Cup, and I love it. I love traditionals and the semi-sweet or the sweet side and spirit barrels. I think it's great. But once again, I'm introducing alcohol and more flavors from the wood and the spirits. Therefore, I'm going sweeter, and that's balancing out all those contributions. It's a little harder to do a dry mead, and I've tried it in a spirit barrel because you now have increased, you've decreased your chances of making a balanced mead, which can be good for some people. And hey, if you like it, make it and drink it,
For sure. No, I laugh a bit at the oak cube thing because I think the same way as like, if I'm going to use anything, it's going to be this cube because I know, or the barrel because I can find out the surface area, and I just kind of nerd out like that. But yeah, spirals and chips I would tend to stay away from because, again, uncertainty of surface space and
yeah,
whatnot.
I mean, they're mulch. You don't put mulch in your mead. That's my opinion. I mean, there's cubes are used widely in the wine industry. There's a plethora of them available. Cubes, spheres, if you want to get really, really dorky, but spheres are kind of expensive. I'll take the cubes. Yeah.
We had a question here of what's your thoughts on Paula Santo wood?
I have no experience with it. That's my thoughts.
There you go. That's pretty quick and painless.
Yeah, it's no experience. I can't speak from any appeal to authority on Palo Santo.
Gotcha. Well,
sorry,
you took a
Weeping Willow Meads.
Sorry, John. Yeah. So you got the hardware here at the Mazer Cup, and like you're saying that, the competitions, it's bringing out, we're seeing better stuff in the competitions and stuff. Well, you pretty much started your own competition, or not competition, but like Mead Festival, which I could kind of see, read me if I'm right, is going to kind of lean towards competition at some point, called the Sugar Belt Mead Festival.
Yeah, we've talked about integrating the comp into it. My buddy Carvin Wilson, he's got some ideas, and he's got a ton of experience. He ran along with a lot of other people Mazer Cup this year and made that happen. And he's been involved in National Homebrew Committee and BJCP for years, and he's just everywhere doing everything. And he's walked the walk, and he talks the talk and walks the walk. He does both, which is really cool. So I've been talking to him about that. We'll see if we can fit it in this year. I want to do something different, so whatever it is going to be different. It's not going to be a total comp. It'll be something completely different. Maybe like a best of show for the fest thing. Maybe we can do more of a fest. But beyond that, I'm actually interested in eventually attaching some sort of a comp to it that uses its own guidelines and is not BJCP event. I think that's important for the mead world and needs to happen. No offense, BJCP. I'm a BJCP mead judge, and I love the events, and it's a great organization, but I think mead needs its own organization. So I'm hoping maybe I can be a part of that. Maybe we can start doing it. It's a lot of work. A lot goes into it, and that's why it hasn't happened. I mean, a lot of folks have put a lot of work just into the guidelines, Ken Schramm back in the day, and, Pete. I mean, many people have spent so much time just integrating it into the good system that the BJCP already has. So I'm not too cocky to think that I can do this, but it's something I want to start, little by little, and maybe we can see what happens. I know the National Honey Board this year did their comp that we entered, and we haven't heard much about yet, but I know they did it more like wine style, where they award several winners and do it on merit. So that's a different thing. But we're kind of stuck between wine and beer once again. So I kind of think we need our own identity. That's one of the things I'm going to be focusing on.
I agree completely, and I think that that's a good spot for it, is at at your own self-induced festival surrounded by people who share those same types of thoughts and notions.
Yeah.
What made you want to start your own festival there in the Midwest?
Well, so our buddy Bob Slanzy, who's been AMMA home governing committee and involved in all the giveaways you see and discounts you see on the AMMA for years, and just a fantastic mead maker in his own right, and just used to come out to MMA meetings and Mazer Cup, and he'd hang out and he would judge. And he's just a liaison for Mead. And he joked with Aaron Shady from Boneflower and said, you guys are in the sugar belt, and you guys sell sugar, the sugar belt. It's the sweet mead, and it's obviously influenced by a lot of the big dessert style mead makers around here, namely, B Nectar and Ken Schramm. They kind of started that in Michigan, and then you got Pips, which is he's legendary Pips. You can't go wrong there. And then you have Standard Meadery here, and then you got going in Ohio. You have Four Fires, Dysfunctional Delights, and you got Peter from Second City's about to open up the first tasting room in the north side of Chicago. And all of us really, we focus on, Adesanya. I mean, I could go on and on. There's so many meaderies that are doing that style. So that sugar belt name, and I'm kind of someone who likes to, I have humility. I think it's important. I definitely have an ego like anyone else, but I keep it in check. And I think part of keeping your ego in check is having humility, and taking the kind of riff of sugar belt and owning it is my way of owning Bob's joke. And it's funny, he has a little trademark on it, and I like between friends. So yeah, we call it Sugar Belt Mead Fest. And it doesn't mean that everything there is going to be sweet. We had meads pour and dry sessions this year. I had anyone's welcome as we expand the festival. So to be clear, however, it does focus around our area, and then we try to bring in as many of my friends, meaderies from around the country that we can have. We had several California meaderies, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and then obviously the Midwest was well represented, Florida. So that's fantastic. I'd like to see these festivals pop up more. I'd like to separate ourselves once again, just like the competition world, even in the festival world, and have more of a mead festivals. So I come from a background of entertainment, performing initially, and then production. So it's a very comfortable place for me to be. I work well under pressure and stress of festivals, and I've done thousands of events in my life. So it was a natural thing for me to want to do an event. And I plan on doing many, many more. And as we expand here, it's going to be more events, not just mead. We have a beer brand we're starting, and there's just a lot of room to expand a lot of things. So that's kind of how it started, and it's great. I pay, we pay, Sugar Belt pays for the product from the maker. I think it's another important thing to start doing. Beer Fest for years have been using festivals as a means for breweries to promote themselves. Our product's a lot more expensive, and we can't really survive off of the per diems or the antiquated amounts of money that they just kind of, the stipends they call them, give you. I brought thousands of dollars of mead to a beer fest and poured it all for free. So, it's kind of like we have to step out. Now, there's great beer festivals out there that do, adjust their stipends for us, and that's great. But, and hey, that's why we had Viking Artisan Ales at Sugar Belt, because he brought some PBR and some High Life along with some of his great beer, just to have a little bit of a palate cleanser, because sometimes you just need a good lager,
Dude, that's one thing I had never, I had always heard about. It's like I knew it, but I didn't know it till I experienced was palate fatigue. You hear about this, you're sampling all these meads, and I didn't think that after, 4 or 5 flights in a day of, 5 to 7 meads, like, you realize you just drank like 38 meads. Like, yeah, I guess it's kind of getting hard to distinguish flavors here at the end of the day.
Yeah. Palate fatigue sets in when you're spitting. You don't have to drink the meat, so you're not getting inebriated. Yeah, you're drinking small amounts, but when you're really analyzing it, those tannins and acids will destroy your mouth over time. And as you get better at judging, you start realizing what your palate fatigue is doing, and your job is to, as if you have to keep going, your job is to recognize how you're tasting things, and then cross-reference it with another judge. I asked several judges, who are walking around observing stuff like Scott Char and Carvin, hey, taste this. And I do that all the time when I'm judging, for a lot of reasons, but especially when it gets later on, because I want a second opinion. I want to make sure that the people get their money's worth. And palate fatigue is a real thing, no doubt. And just look at Untappd ratings for the last thing people drank in the end of the night.
Oh, that's hilarious. Oh, man. I want to scroll back up the comments a little way. Somebody had made a comment said here, will you guys make anything with bananas in it? And that was one of the other things I wanted to bring up. Was one of the meads that was at Mazer Cup was a rum barrel aged banana bochet. And my land, dude, that thing, I can't believe that thing didn't take any medals.
I had it
That thing
entered
was
twice. Yeah. Well, I had it
that
entered
thing
or
was
only be one. Yeah. I agree. I think it's I mean, hey, I'm a judge. I know how this works. It happens. It's competitions. You get two judges. I haven't looked at the score sheets yet, but I know all the judges that were there, and you can bet that I'm going to give them shit. But it'll be fun, you know. And one thing you learn as a commercial mead maker is it's pretty funny. The four meads, if you look at it on paper, the four meads that we medaled on were the four. If you looked at what sold the most and the fastest, were the slowest out of all four. They were the last four as far as what sold to the market, and that's why we need to change mead judging also. And then BJCP, unfortunately, I don't think is completely 100% relevant to the commercial world. I just don't think that the guidelines are quite there, and I don't think that the training's quite there. So you know, judging's subjective. There's objective rules, and you need to be able to separate yourself. Judges, they get palate fatigue. They have bad days. They have different things, and things happen. I get it. You know, you got to take the stuff lightly. It's for fun and education, and that's what it's all about. So yeah, that banana bochet. Personally, I think it's one of the craziest things that we've ever made. But hey, whatever. It sold well, and people like it. I plan on doing more of it. So that started off as a 100% bochet. That was the intent was to have a 14% mead. That then we put a ton of bananas in secondary in, and you know, these bananas the fermentation continued, and I ended up getting about an 18% dry banana mead at the end. That was 100% bochet base. There's about 600 pounds of pre-peeled bananas. Before you take the peel off bananas in about 40 gallons. So 600 pounds of bananas, 40 gallons. That's probably about 400 pounds of banana flesh. You're getting about 60% of meat out of a banana, and the rest is peel. And it's just the flesh. We break them up and throw them in there. Different levels of ripeness, all that. Over the course of, this was 3 waves of bananas over the course of probably 2 months. After that, it dried out. I did not anticipate it continuing to ferment. So I was left with a dry banana mead that was crazy weird and 18%. And the base was a 100% bochet. And so it was wild. And so I just started bench trialing it, and we had a bunch of Metafoam honey hanging around. So I back sweetened the hell out of it. And Metafoam was just working really well to bring out the bananas and the custard flavors of that bochet. And it was taking down, and the more honey I added.
I'd just like to mention that a lot of people right now are out there just like shaking their head at the fact I just had a bunch of Metafoam honey laying around.
Well, it's my life. Yeah, so I happen to have, I did a lot of Metafoam stuff last year. But yeah, it basically, I like the flavor profile, and then, you know, I said, let's put this in a rum barrel, mostly because once I got the sweetness right and the caramelization right, it just wanted a rum barrel. So I put it in a rum barrel for about 4 or 5 months. Didn't take a whole lot. I wasn't looking to get crazy oxidation or aging on it. I was mostly looking for the rum barrel flavor. So that worked out. I got another banana mead going now, strawberry banana, and that's going to be broken into 2 batches. It'll be strawberry banana and then a atomic cake thing, which will be strawberry banana, vanilla, and chocolate. That one's giving me a little bit of issues right now. It's not quite there. In fact, it was going to be a member release, and I haven't even told them this, and it's going to have to be delayed, and I'm going to have to switch it out because it's not turning out how I wanted it to yet, and we're just not there, and I'm not going to rush it. So you can't, some of these things, they're experiments. We use our Founders Club. We have about 300 members in our Founders Club, and we use them for feedback. We use them to help us get new ideas and see what they want. They vote on certain things now. I try to get them, but they're just fantastic people. We had 4 of our members win Mazer Cups on the home side, and that's just great. I love it. And we had others enter that got great scores. Like my buddy Steve Daniels in his strawberry mead at 42, and he didn't even medal. I mean, that shows you how his category was.
Right. I've heard that from a couple different people that they'd had that they'd gotten like in the 90s and stuff like that and weren't medaling. So it's like, holy crap, are you kidding?
Yeah, there's certain categories that are super tight. And then, if you would have entered a bracket, you would have gotten third place for doing nothing because there was only 2 in there.
Man, I was scared to even mention something like that, but yeah.
Well,
Um,
sometimes we've had 15 brackets, we've had 20.
right.
That's just the way it goes. And this year's weird. We're still recovering from COVID. People, a lot of meaderies got hit hard. It's crazy, and I can't tell you. I can't tell you like how happy I am that we're still around and we have a great club and a great community to support us. But there's a lot of people that are struggling, and they weren't thinking about entering a comp this year. So, some people weren't able to enter. A lot of great mead makers didn't have their stuff in there. There was still plenty of great competition, but I'm hoping to see this COVID thing normalize and wind down a little more, and we'll continue to amp up that competition scene.
Couldn't have said it better myself, man. I agree with you 100%. Yeah, I could name probably a half a dozen meaderies that closed down for as many as that are opening up. And I mean, some of these cats were like some serious, I want to say mainstays, but I mean, big time participants, Leprechauno down in Georgia and Ancient Fires up in New Hampshire. I mean, Rabbit's Foot closed. Those guys, Rabbit's Foot have been open for 20 years.
Oh yeah. Mike Falls, he's a pioneer in American mead making for sure.
I would say, yeah, a legend in the industry. We got a question here. It says, regarding judging mead, how do you feel about the subcategories of dry, semi-sweet, and sweet meads in terms of density adjusted? For example, instead of a semi-sweet being between density, I got caught up here, between density 10, 11, and 10, 25. Change to, 10, 11 to 15, so where there's less of a gap.
Yeah, so that's a valid point, and I'm gonna say straight off the bat, don't pay attention to the BJCP numbers. I think that they shouldn't even be in there because we don't use them. You don't have to follow those numbers. You cannot quantify, and this Sugar Belt has challenged this. And I mean, heck, I tested a lot of people. I had like best of show winner in home, Steve Fletty. He had the privilege of having his winter mead, his passion fruit Riesling, and amazing. In fact, we're talking about doing a commercial collab, but that's for another day. But the it's all about Ken Schramm's talked about this a lot. You can't put a number on what tastes good and how it tastes and how it balances. So I think the numbers are rough and people worry about that. I don't pay attention to the numbers. I've had stuff that people, when you get your first thing that says this is dry and you're like, this is actually semi-sweet, I answered it dry, and you're saying it's dry. That's right. A problem in balance. So I don't pay attention to the numbers. If it was up to me for judging, you wouldn't have those guidelines. And I think you should declare sweetness as a category. I think it's good. And it should fit in that category. I think you should also declare the alcohol content. I don't think there should be strength things. A lot of people mess with that. A lot of people don't know what their alcohol content is. But, I mean, a sack mead, is 14% or is it 20%? That's a huge gap. And I want to know, yeah. And I want to know what someone says it is. Are they saying it's 12 and it tastes like 16? Well, that's a big problem. Are they saying it's 18 and it tastes like 14? Well, it better taste like 18, but if it tastes like 14, it could still be 18. But that's more information. I think more information would be good specific to that mead. But I like dry, sweet categories, just semi-sweet, dry, and sweet. I just don't think that you need to stay within those numbers at all. In fact, yeah, I mean, gosh, I don't know. I don't really dock a lot of points for sweetness unless it's a specified sweetness for the category and it's way out of balance for that. Maybe I'll still give it, if it's a perfect mead other than that and they declared it wrong, they're going to a few points off. And maybe if it's going to screw over the guy that declared is right, they won't medal for it, but they're going to get a good score. I'm not going to dock people for declaring the wrong number or in the sweetness level. I think it's all about perception. It's a culinary thing. It's not a numbers thing.
Right. And we were talking about some other similar things when we were there at Mesa Cup. And one of the things that you had mentioned kind of in passing, and I kind of thought you were joking at it at first, and I kind of wanted to pick your brain about it a little bit more. You had mentioned something about and I use the term lightly, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but like, boiling your honeys or heating your honeys up.
No. Yeah, so I was getting a lot of guff from everybody because I'm the honey boiler.
Right.
Well, as the Bochet stuff, I like the Bochet varietals. I'm doing an experimentation run in the last couple of years. Me and Adam Lynch at Standard Meadery, Adam Lynch is just a fantastic mead maker, fantastic business person. He's a great friend, and he's just makes phenomenal mead. I can't. His relationship with our meadery is invaluable. I run stuff by him. He bounces stuff off me. This is almost a daily thing sometimes. And it was his idea a long time ago. Hey, let's do this Bochet collab. Cool. So we did the first one, and we used a Star Thistle Basswood honey. And then he's like, we talked about the next one at his place we were going to do, and it's going to be Basswood. Raspberry Blossom. He had the idea for, and that's what opened my eyes was boiling that Raspberry Blossom honey at his place. And the Bochet we do, I look at it as like candy making. It's a culinary thing. We're boiling honey in kettles over fire, and it's gonna take probably about 6 to 7 hours to do what we want to do, and that involves the reason it takes a while for the honey to do it. It expands about 10 times its size or volume, and you have to boil all the water out before it starts really caramelizing. So there's a window. So we hold it at near boiling temperatures to boiling, just right at the crest, which is usually around 235 to 245 degrees. And you want to be careful not to scorch it or burn it. And you got to stir it a lot. Anyway, the Raspberry Blossom just maintained amazing characters of that honey throughout doing we like to do a deep caramelization, a slow and low and big, because it becomes like tawny port-like almost, and almost like tawny port or all those like big perny raisin flavors you get in fruitcake flavors you get from Polish style meads where they use, different buckwheat blends and different barrels and the micro-oxidation over 3 years, for a Dwoniak, that kind of thing. You're getting that kind of style with the Bochet, and then you're getting the flavors from the honey, which is incredible. The Raspberry Blossom tasted like Raspberry Blossom Bochet for 7 hours. I mean, it held its varietal character. If you know what that honey tastes like, it's unmistakable. So then, we went further and we continued to do it. We just did a Tupelo, and I get a lot of guff for doing Tupelo. I did the country's most expensive honey, and I boiled it, and it's freaking good. It's phenomenal, and I know it's Tupelo. And I can tell the difference between the Tupelo and the raspberry, and all these are different. So one thing we try to do, especially in that project, is to break through norms, and you have to do that. People repeat a lot of stuff on the internet, and they say you shouldn't do this, you can't do that. And if someone tells me I can't do something, I'm doing it at least twice. So that's my rule. It doesn't mean it goes well. Sometimes I just need to learn. I need to stick my finger in the fire and, feel what burning my finger, is like. And that's how discovery happens. You can't get caught in hearsay. You have to do your own experimentation. So I'm hoping to break that a little bit. I think it's big. When I started in the commercial industry 3 years ago, one of the big things that was going around a lot was, if you're going to do a fruit mead, use wildflower honey. It's pointless to waste any varietal honey doing a fruit mead because the fruit's going to cover up the honey. It's the same exact principle. And now every mead in Mesa Cup and other competitions in the dessert category is using crazy varietal honeys mixed with fruit. And that combination is a huge factor. I mean, there's a big difference in a blueberry mead with Tupelo and a blueberry mead with Metafoam or a blueberry mead with Orange Blossom. They are 3 different meads. And I can't stress that enough, especially with the copious amounts of honey we're using. So then it matters on the back end. You can combine meads, combine honeys, blend honeys. So it's an endless world. So we're trying to challenge the stigma of, use melter honey. I mean, first of all, I'm sorry, guys, for the commercial makers who do this. And I'm going to say it right now on your show for the first time publicly, because some of my great friends use melter honey and call it Bochet. Melter honey is not Bochet. Okay. It's just not. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Melter honey's great. It has its uses, and Lost Cause, Billy Belts. He kills it with blending and melter honey with stuff. Adam Crockett he kills it at Upper Reach. They do a lot of great things with melter honey, but it's not Bochet.
Thank you. It's a different beast altogether.
Yeah. So that's one thing I'm going to be working on too. I wish they'd stop calling it Bochet, because it's not Bochet. So that's whatever. That's a stickler thing. It's kind of something. It's a little jab on the shoulder, but man, those guys are doing fantastic stuff with Melter honey. But the Bochet, I think it's a whole world. And I was telling you, like, no one else is doing this that I know of. Varietal honey Bochets where they're, and it's not like it's a pie. I mean, people have done it in the past. They've done it forever. I mean, it's not like this is groundbreaking. I'm just saying in the pop, what you hear repeated is don't do that. So that just leaves for a space for me to try to do it. Now, it doesn't mean you should do it always, and there's definitely mistakes. I've dumped plenty of mead down the drain, so I'm not afraid to make a mistake, and that's how you learn. So, yeah, I think that's pretty fun. I love doing that, and I get a lot of shit for it,
So when you're doing these experimental batches or trying something new, are you doing these in like smaller, like 5-gallon or even down to like carboy sized, or are you doing these in like bigger 30-gallon plus tanks?
Right now, our space doesn't allow for small stuff because we just don't have the room. It takes just as much physical space generally, to do 10 gallons as it does to do, let's say 50. Right now, the smallest batches we're running is probably 50. I have confidence enough to at least know that, okay, if this doesn't go the way it's planned, because, you got to sell the stuff. You got to sell the product. So, now it's like, I always say this is one of my biggest rules. What makes a good maker, separates a fantastic mead maker from a mediocre mead maker is learning how to blend and learning how to turn something that doesn't go your way into something fantastic. And it's not going to always go your way. That's the rules of chefs. That's the rules of winemakers. I mean, the best wineries in the world don't know that 28 bricks Cabernet Sauvignon that they think is going to be the reserve is actually going to end up being the reserve until it's fermented. And then they don't really know until it's 2 years in the barrel. And then they decide what it is. They don't tell it what it's going to be. It tells them. And that's sometimes what happens with mead. So, that's key. So, the experimentations I don't do. I do some like adjuncting. Yes, I break into ball jars for crying out loud. I do all kinds of tiny adjunct experiments and different things like that. However, in our new location, I do plan on going back and setting up our homebrew setup a little more. Because I want to once we hire a few more people, hopefully, and I really, between, Brandon Benniger, our mead maker, he loves to experiment, and he's been playing a lot. He still goes home and makes mead after he makes mead at our place. And I want to have that. I want to have that back. I do want to experiment a little bit more and do smaller batches. We just don't have the space yet. But for now, it's mostly like small adjustments so we can make sure that the product is, still going to be viable to turn into something we can sell. But we learn something from every batch.
That's good to know. We got a quick question back here. It says, we used wildflower and orange blossom honey with nutmeg and vanilla last year, and it came out so good. What other flavors would you suggest to use with orange blossom honey? Is there one that you guys have like a go-to mixer with your orange blossom?
Well, orange blossom to me and to some other people, like, Adam, I'm going to bring up Adam Lynch again at Standard Meadery. We both use a lot of orange blossom, and we consider that our wildflower. It's our base honey. I think it's such a neutral honey in so many ways, and it's very specific, but it's also it's honey. Everyone recognizes it as a honey. It's a little more consistent flavor profile wise. Then let's say some wildflowers. You don't know what you're going to get with certain wildflowers. Now you can find a wildflower that may be consistent and good, especially from the larger producers. But you're going to get a lot of different flavors. So, there's nothing wrong with wildflower. But I like, for a big fruited stuff in general, I like orange blossom. I pretty much don't think there's a fruit that doesn't work with orange blossom. So I guess the answer to your question is anything. Orange blossom is a honey that just works well with any fruit. I literally can't. I challenge you, anyone out there, find a fruit. Find a fruit that doesn't work with orange blossom honey. I mean, maybe some gross fruit that doesn't work with any honey, that's possible.
Fruit and orange blossom.
Yeah. As far as spices go, that's a little more picky. I mean, there's certainly some spices I think that don't go as well. It's a fruitier floral honey and a little citrusy. So, nutmeg and cinnamon. I mean, what I would try to do is maybe add another honey into the mix. and then you can do some more things. But I look at Orange Blossom as it has the option to be bright. So you want more spices, you could get away from the cinnamon and the nutmeg and then try something with like juniper and coriander or lavender or something, a little bit more on the herbal citrus side. With those kind of notes, hops work awesome with Orange Blossom. Hops are great. And then hops go great with spruce tips. And then that ties right back into the juniper thing. So I love those things in Orange Blossom. I think fruit wise, like I said, you can't find a bad fruit with Orange Blossom. I think it's probably one of the most perfect, honeys that can be colored to almost anything you want. So,
I had one Orange Blossom mead that was an Orange Blossom blueberry I didn't care for, but it was fairly early in my mead journeys, and I don't think I might have appreciated it for what it was, because it was a dry Orange Blossom blueberry, and it was just really intense. It had this kind of flavor I wasn't used to, and it was the dry and everything like that. So I definitely want to go back and revisit that one, because I've heard lots of times, just like you're saying, Orange Blossom mixes well with so many different flavors. So
yeah, it's funny because Elliot, which is our #1 selling mead ever, and the mead that is our flagship, it's Orange Blossom and blueberries.
Right, and I think I had two or three different, at least two different iterations while I was there. I had the vanilla Elliot, I believe, and then the Chipotle Elliot. Was it the Elliot Burn or?
I think you had there's a BBA Elliot, which our members joke and call it barbecue Elliot because the font looks like BBQ instead of BBA.
Yes.
Yes,
that one.
About. But it's funny, and but that was I was just Elliot that was aged in bourbon barrels for a year. We do that every year as a variant. Then there was, I think I brought Midnight Elliot, which is it's not. I mean, that's Elliot blueberries, and then it's got cherries and black currants and vanilla and then coffee. So that's all over the place. That's not really Elliot. But then you had the Elliot's Revenge, which is the Chipotle version. Yeah.
That one, I love that one. That was so good. I mean, I never would have thought I like spicy blueberries like that, but man, I'm a huge fan. That was amazing.
Yeah, our girl Tina, who's a fantastically talented tattoo artist, did the artwork on that one, and it's one of her favorite meads, and we kind of did that collab with her. She's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was very cool, my man. So I saw a question earlier. Do you guys have slots open in your membership club, or is that was it a founders club specifically, and it's now kind of closed and it's just been rolling on for those cats?
Yeah, basically, we have this philosophy that I want to prove myself before I ask for other people's commitment. So we had waited until we opened up, and we're open and had our first few releases before we started the club. And the people who were initially in the club started at 200 people in 2018. And they were all folks who had supported us on our first bottle releases that were like 250 bottles each flavor there. And the first version of Elliot, the first version of Current Situation, and BBA. And so those people who support us had first dibs on getting in. And then we had a club of 200 people for that year. And that kind of like got our feet wet. We added 100 spots the following year in 2019. That was great, and the members fit in well. We had about a 95% retention rate, so we only lost a few members, which was really great. I can't even say how many. And then we also added the 100. The 100 came from a list we have on our website. It's at manicmeadery.com on the founders page. You can sign up on the list. And I will say, and I'll say it here, also that I don't say this very often, but we take care of our family. We really appreciate people who help us out and spread the word. And if you start supporting us and you're really into the product and you engage and we engage with each other and it's great, then there's a good chance that in the future you'll be able to get in the club. Hopefully we can expand a little more. Right now we can't. So we're at 300 people. We just had signups for 2021 here into 2022. So we won't have that sign up until November of next year. Well, no, I'm sorry. It'll be in the summer of next year is when we'll when we'll be doing the next member thing and reevaluating that. But regardless, though, that's just one little thing, and we're on year 3 now, and it's been fantastic and amazing. I'm humbled by it. But we do a lot of other stuff all the time, and there's a lot of stuff available, a lot of small batch things, and we're going to probably start other clubs. I'd actually like to break the clubs up a little bit on top of the Founders Club, and I would like to have like a traditional barrel age club. It's like more like John Talkington style, where you're getting X amount of bottles per quarter. Here you go. And, it's a little, it's not, the Founders Club is it's all dessert meads. That's what it is. It's experimental stuff and dessert meads. And then, it's some priority stuff. You get priorities for things we do and whatnot, and first right of refusal and some merch. And our little Facebook group, which is pretty fun. But, I want to specify more stuff. I would like to add more clubs that I can really focus in on certain things that people like let's say a traditional club. It's like you get a dozen monofloral honey traditionals every year made the same exact way, but they're just different honeys. That's kind of stuff that I'm into.
More like a wine of the month club type of thing.
Yeah, kind of, but you could specify what you're into, because some people don't want the dessert. I mean, we have a lot of people in the community come in. They drink our semi-sweet stuff, our wines, our ciders. Maybe they'll have a little bit of the dessert stuff here and there, even though it's a primary, funder of our overhead is the dessert stuff. A lot of people do like the other things, so it'd be fun to be like, well, I mean, I tell people who don't really favor the dessert things, because we have a lot of things on tap that we never bottle, and I tell them all the time, like, you don't even need to be in the club if you're not into the dessert stuff, because you're just gonna. It's fun, but if you don't like the sweet stuff, you're not, it's not the club for you. And I think there's people out there that would, really, and there's club members now that would love to be in like a specific barrel aged traditional club, or, just crazy wild. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I plan on adding that probably before we expand the Founders Club much more than it is, but you can still get in, be on the waiting list, bug us, and hang around. There'll be opportunities in the future. We do a lotto pretty much to replace people who leave. So we'll see. There'll be more opportunities in the future, though.
I'll tell you what, man, if you end up starting up a traditionals club, dry, semi-sweet, or otherwise, I mean, sign me up first unless you got somebody else in line in front of me, but I want to be in on that, because Manic Meadery traditionals got to be just slapping.
Yeah, I would love to do. I mean, traditionals are my passion right now. I mean, in a lot of ways. So it's just discovering the honeys. But I think like maybe call it the monofloral club or something. You're going to get 12 meads a year, and they're going to be, varying sweetness levels for that. Yeah. Or, you can get even crazier with it. You could do like, you could be like, here's a dry, a semi-sweet, and a sweet every 3 months or whatever. And they're all different. I don't know. I'm not really sure, but I would just love to. And then the people who are getting it know what they're getting. They're not like, okay, is he going to do a cider this week? Or is this, I don't like blueberries, and I don't like cherries. I don't like vanilla. The coconut's not my thing. This is like, it's honey, and it's a traditional, and you signed up for it, and they're going to be excited. So it's kind of target marketing. And then we can really, really regulate batch sizes, because, getting on these honeys, man, is a lot of work. Finding certain honey is a lot of work. Getting small enough amounts to just do a run a 50 or 60 gallon batch and test it is a lot of work to get a few pails of some of this honey. It's expensive, and you don't want to waste it. I get every drop out of that bucket, because I'm not wasting any of those bees' work. So
definitely, I again, as somebody who takes the time to appreciate all the nuances and that honey has to have, and all the all the steps and the care and gingerness it takes to make something a traditional like that really come across and pop well. That's somebody whose club I want to be a part of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're down with John Talkington, so you know how that works. He's one of those masters at flavor bending and balancing. And man, I was in the Birmingham Club since it started, and I had to bow out this year because it broke my heart too. But I think he'll let me back in if I want. I had such a backlog of mead, and I can't, since COVID, I usually have these parties and I just give away mead, and not just our stuff, but all my friends' stuff and other things I support. And don't get me wrong, I house plenty of bottles of Birmingham on my own, and I like to be selfish about them. And I still have a few coveted bottles sitting there waiting for me to drink one of these days. But yeah, you got to, I'm running out of space, and it's just ridiculous. So I had to pause acquiring any new stuff, mostly because, one person can't drink all that, and with the lack of parties and places to share becomes an issue.
Definitely. Well, we are approaching the 1 hour mark. Do you still have some time left, or are you good to, or you got to cut out?
Yeah, sure. I got a few.
All right. So you mentioned John Talkington a couple different times there. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Birmingham Horn, and I feel absolutely honored that they, entrust me with their product to distribute here in Arizona and whatnot. One of the things I always try to ask people I'm interviewing is, who's your favorite mead maker, or if there's a meadery that you haven't got to visit yet, or you would like to visit, like who is that? Who is it that inspires you? Type of question.
Wow. I mean, that's so tough. There's
Or otherwise.
so many people to shout at, but yeah, I mean, I've mentioned a lot of them already.
Sure.
I call, like, for our style and the way this business was formed, and the way we, pay the bills is with dessert meat, and you just got to nod, to Brad Dallafor and Ken Schramm in Ferndale, Michigan, and what Bee Nectar and Schramm's did back in the day. And you have Coonan up there, and not to be overlooked at all. And Ken Schramm, and with the help of Brad, he started making his projects there at Bee Nectar, and then got his own place. And now you have Schramm's Mead, which is, it's world-class wine. I'm severely influenced by Ken quietly. I don't go reach out to people that I'm into, and I just kind of admire from afar, and I pick stuff apart. And we end up knowing each other over the years, obviously, and I'm very privileged for that. But I don't I'm not the question asker. I don't message people and get in and say, how'd you do that and what'd you do this. I just kind of drink their stuff and watch their interviews and experiment, and then I get influenced by their stuff. And yeah, Ken, I mean, he made me, as a person, he made me like sweet meat, to be honest, because I was a winemaker. I liked wine, and Ken is also a winemaker and also a wine enthusiast, among any other fermentable beverage you could imagine, in a culinary way. So, he brought having Madeline. I've said this a million times publicly, and it's the same for Aaron Shavy at Boneflower. We've talked about it on many interviews. Madeline Batch 1, the boysenberry mead, changed my views on what a sweet wine or a sweet mead can be. The expression of the fruit blew my mind, and I said, I have to make this. And I only drank an ounce of it that night, but I wanted more. And I got Black Agnes, and I got all the other ones, and I had Heart of Darkness, and I was just blown away, and that started my quest for the dessert stuff. So, definitely some props there. I mean, I wouldn't be doing exactly what I'm doing now without him and many other people. But as far as current mead makers go, beyond that, reaching out far, I have a lot of respect for Billy Veltz at Lost Cause. I think he's just one of the best. He's just his passion. I look for people who are passionate, dorky mead makers like myself. So most of these guys, I talk to them on a regular basis because, I'm one of those guys, hopefully to some of them, and we just kind of bounce stuff off each other. And, I mentioned Adam Lynch at Standard. I mean, he's just a fantastic maker, newer to the game like I am. But he doesn't need anyone to tell him that something's bad or this or that, because he knows already, because he's played with it and analyzed it and tried to get better and looked for new ingredients and tried to make it better. And he's self-aware, and that's what makes a great business person or mead maker as good as they are. And that's great. I mean, I can't go. I mean, John Talkington's one of my favorites, no doubt. Knowing John and meeting him over the years at old MMA conferences and competitions, and he's such a great guy, and he's got so much experience. So I'm very influenced by the way he likes to challenge norms as well, and he's got so much traditional training as well as culinary aspects he adds. He's not afraid to use any ingredient. He's done almost anything you can imagine, and he's not loud and annoying about it. He's hilarious online. I love seeing me some John Talkington posts, and
if there's a guy out there who doesn't give a fuck, it's John Talkington.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I mean, there's I could name meaderies forever that's really good, but currently,
sure.
like, that's that's really where we came from, and that's a huge influence there. And you know, John, I was more introduced to, obviously, it can't get his stuff in Indiana, and it was the online community and him running Modern Mead Makers and just being in the same events together and just trying his stuff and talking to the man and seeing what he does again from afar. I've talked to John many a times and about whatever, and we're fine with asking each other questions, but John doesn't. Yeah. I'm like John, and I kind of stay on that end of it. I stay in the background a little bit and do my thing, and I'm not really, I'm a little more. I'm not so. Hey, how'd you do that? What'd you do here? John already knows what he did because he figured it out. So yeah, I mean, I could name mead makers all day, though. I could talk about specific meads. I think it's pretty wild. There's a lot of great makers out there.
Do you guys have a library program? Do you guys save like a certain amount of bottles from every batch you make or anything like that? Or
yeah,
that's gotta
definitely.
Be nice.
It's crazy, and that's one of the reasons why I can't get any more mead, because most of my job now is looking how stuff held up, and I kind of use like, oh, this I do the next year. I have to taste it up against the previous years and the years before that, see how it held up. We're going uncharted territory here. I mean, the wine like stuff and the trad's fine, but you're throwing marshmallows and cookies and kumquats into something, leaving it hazy. You don't know how it's going to hold up in a bottle, and you have no idea. And then you're putting a $1 cork in there. It's crazy. So, those things are key. I told members when I did Elliott this last year, I was drinking the adjuncted ones that we had tried the year before, and I said, you should drink these now. These aren't going to age great. They're just not aging great. And it's because there's a crap ton of adjuncts in there, and people, it's funny what consumers want, but they don't mind in this kind of sector of the market. They don't mind. We've had our club vote on whether we should leave a bunch of fruit pulp in a. I think did you have the pineapple upside down cake that I had at
I missed out on that one too. I missed out on the pineapple missed out on the pineapple one and the apple pizer.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, that one has it's 40% pineapple sediment, and it's a barrel aged cherry mead, though. It was in a barrel for a year, and then we threw pineapple in it, and we were going to clear it. And I asked the club, and they wanted the pineapple in there, so we left it in there and saved us money and time. And it's kind of like a smoothie. It's probably the first smoothie barrel aged, pineapple upside down cake mead, I'd imagine.
Definitely.
Clocking in at 17 or 16% or whatever it is, with chunks in it that you have to shake up before you pour. It's really weird, So I don't know how that's going to age, but right now I'll tell you what. After a year, it's drinking pretty good. So that one's holding up better than some that aren't like that. So I don't know. It's really tough when you have all these adjuncts. You just don't know how it's going to last. They bring a lot of microbials into the bottle, or a lot of oxygen particles that are going to change things over time. Just like in the beer world, coffee falls off, chocolate falls off, all those kinds of things. They change. Peppers become green peppers. Certain malts and barrels can turn to soy sauce. Whatever, it happens. So we're learning. I think like Elliott and the basic single fruited meads, which I think are my passion for the fruit side of things, which is very much the Ken Schramm side of what we do. Those are pretty dialed in. Those age very well. Those are easily hitting their peaks in 3 to 5 years. But when you start throwing a bunch of, like I said, marshmallows and fruit roll-ups and all this other shit in there, it's just gonna change. So we're learning. Maybe cans, like Adam and Stan does, is the way of the future. Maybe just cans, But even cans, people sit on them in the fridge and they won't drink them for a year. That's one of the biggest challenges you have, is getting people to drink the mead.
Yeah, the secondary market is huge. People want to just save them and trade them like they're baseball cards or something. It's like, no, a lot of these are meant to be enjoyed sooner. Like I picked up one that was from a 2018 batch. It was a blueberry. It's supposed to be like s'mores with blueberry, and the blueberry completely fallen off. Went and paid some quasi-exorbitant price, above market price for it retail, and And it's like, man, I really wish I would have, enjoyed this in 2019 when it was fresh, because I'm sure it was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I think the secondary market, because of all the mead being made now, is certainly seeing its downturn, which I love.
Yes.
I mean, a secondary market shouldn't be based on the fact that there's only 4 meaderies selling certain styles, and then there's just the supply is not to meet the demand. That was the secondary market before. Now you have a lot of meaderies making a lot of those styles, and a lot of them are really good, and you have a lot of options, and people in a lot of clubs, and they can't, like, they have the same problem I do. They can't drink everything. And I think that's fantastic, because a secondary market that's fine, but it should be based on, wow, this was the craziest shit from the craziest year I had from this crazy maker. And it's like, it's not every mead they make. That's not a secondary market. That's just being in the right place at the right time. But
Exactly.
as competition starts increasing and supply increases, the merits become higher and higher. The standards become higher and higher, which I love. That's how it should be. And then we need to work on, things at price points that people can afford too, which is another thing I'm working on.
Yeah, that is one thing that I'm definitely running up against as a distributor is, trying to keep price points and trying to explain to people while I'm doing tasting and sampling events, and I'm sure your cats in the tasting room have the same types of things, trying to sit there and, I don't want to see you say justify the price, but for lack of a better term, you're justifying the cost of, why am I paying in some instances $9-10 for a 3-ounce pour, of this stuff when I could go get 16 ounces of beer for $2 less.
Yeah, I mean, and like I see it both ways. The fact of the matter is, for a lot of us small makers, is we don't. If you're really good and you have the people who, they allow us, by buying the high end product, to play with, buckets of metafoam laying around and all those things. They allow us to do that, but that's what they want. We're doing what they want. I mean, heck, I can make traditionals all day long and I'd be happy. It'd be a lot easier as far as logistics. I wouldn't have to press fruit. I wouldn't have to go get the fruit. I wouldn't have to compost the fruit. I wouldn't have to remove the fruit. And I could just focus on the product. But, I wouldn't have to source, freshly toasted Ugandan cocoa nibs and, be annoyed that, I have to get my Planfolio bourbon vanilla beans from, Indonesia now because of Madagascar. And that would be great, but you just can't do that. So it becomes you're doing what the consumer wants. They're willing to pay the price, and you're trying to give them a product. Now, it doesn't mean that there's not stuff out there that's too expensive. I mean, by far, I'm a consumer. I still buy mead. I'll buy bottles all the time. I love trying commercial mead, and yeah, I have high expectations. There's some people who I don't see. I don't know where the price is. I think they kind of charge money because they think that someone else does and they should.
Right.
I don't do that at all. I have a pretty easy formula I use, and as we increase our production, I plan on offering stuff that's more approachable and affordable, because I plan on distilling limited. I mean, the session mead's a good way to get to there, but I think there can be our like, we have a PBJ mead right now. It's $18 a bottle for $3.75, and it's how it's been.
Fair.
Yeah, it's getting there. Not quite there. I mean, meaderies, this isn't a new concept. Moonlight's had very good prices on the shelf for years. Brad at B Nectar, he's done the same thing. And I those two stick out to me a lot.
And they both have really wide distribution too.
Yeah, they do. So, the problem is they're sitting on the shelves with themselves, so they need someone else to step up and someone else to distribute, and big price disparities between them and some other meaderies that are in a lot of the same markets, as as a distributor.
Yes.
It's pretty hard to look at a $12 bottle of mead and then look at a $42 bottle of mead next to it. And when you make that decision as a consumer that's never had mead, or maybe had a couple and has expectations, man, that $42 mead, that thing has to blow your socks off. It better.
Yeah. And well, I mean, and I'm getting it from all angles here, because I have Superstition, who is arguably in the top 3 biggest mead, makers and distributors in the world. We got Schramm's on our shelves here. plus we have some local cats that make some pretty decent stuff. So, and then I'm trying to bring in other decent stuff, and now I'm trying to compete against their prices for their bottles, you know, and since they're local, they don't have to deal with, and they're all self-distributed, they don't have to deal with any of that overhead or anything like that. So,
Yeah.
but the fact that I can bring in stuff like Brimming Horn and like Space Time Mead and Cider Works out of Pennsylvania, and they can sit here on these shelves next to, you know, Superstition, Shrams, and local stuff and sell bottles, I think speaks to the potential for the distribution that you're speaking of. You know, there's room for more competitive distribution out there.
Yeah, 100%. You know, it's just it's so hard to. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't have to tell you, but it's just so hard to get the right product and then
Absolutely.
have a consistent flow of it, and then to even be able to train the consumer. So yeah, I know we're still in the 90s for craft beer, you know, in Mead world. Yeah. By far, you know, we haven't even hit the late 90s yet. So.
Oh, you're talking about like, I see what. Wow, you think it's that far back now? That's the farthest I've heard anybody put it back. I've heard a lot of people say like 10, 15, maybe 20 years ago. I've heard a handful of people, but you're even going farther back than that. You're talking like
20's getting warm, you know.
Got you.
You know, mead and beer, not the same thing. You know, it took a long time for that. You know, when homebrewing was re-legalized, that's what sparked the craft brew movement. And the 80s and 90s was all about people learning how to make beer again and at home. You know, it was a big thing. It was fun. The local homebrew store was born, and brew kits became a thing, and then microbreweries started popping up. You know, people weren't just drinking their dad's, you know, champagne and beers. And nothing wrong with High Life. I love High Life. But you know,
me too.
Yeah, that's what sparked it. And you know, I mean, you could see it in the generations. I mean, it's not like it didn't exist. There were still meaderies, but they just haven't. I remember, you know, being a 40-year-old here. I remember, you know, drinking beer when imports used to include Sam Adams. Like Sam Adams Boston Lager was an import.
Pete's Wicked Ale.
Yeah. Yeah, and then that was Boston Beer Company was it. And then Sierra Nevada spun the world on its head with their pale ale. And that was, in my opinion, that's the birth of widely accessible American pale ale, which is a higher IBU, hoppier beer featuring the Cascade hop. And it's still one of the best beers on shelves. And it's still every can and bottle of Sierra Nevada is bottle condition. It's incredible. They have an incredible story. They're incredible brewery. But gosh, they've been doing it since what, the late 80s or early 90s? I mean,
yeah,
I'm not positive. I think it was the late 80s. You know, Goose Island's been around forever.
You
know, my local homebrew heroes are turned to commercial successes, Three Floyds. You know, and I think they hit it at the right time, most definitely. They were in the perfect time because they bypassed the 80s and 90s and they started making beer in the late 90s and then at home in Hammond, and then, you know, went to Munster, and the rest is history, really. Their story's still being created. And they invented the beer festival, Dark Lord Day. I mean, and they, you know, I say they invented it. They invented a lot. They helped for the hype beer share world. You know, they certainly supported that because people live for that Dark Lord beer share. You know, and how ingenious! Hey, bring all your beer in to this festival of beer, and you can share your beer here, and then people bring all their expensive beer and they drink it all at that place. And you think it would make them lose money, but they're just bringing beers that they bought there 4 years ago and then sharing it with everyone there and then getting their new beers. It's just a cycle. It's a wonderful thing. And it's a fantastic time, even though I don't think it's ever going to be like it used to. But
yeah, see, being from the Northwest, I grew up drinking like Pyramid and Red Hook.
Oh yeah,
and Deschutes and Widmer Brothers.
Yeah, Red Hook was a huge one that got out there fast. Obviously, it's a huge brewery. Anchor Steam, that's another big one.
Alaskan.
Yeah, and so that's I mean, we don't have do we have that in the mead world yet? I mean, maybe
in what regards?
You know, as far as those players for that longevity, you know, I mean, maybe I mean,
Oh,
who would you compare to Anchor? Who would you compare to Sierra Nevada right now? And what year would it be?
oh, hey, now there's a new game.
And that's how I look at it, that's how I quantify it, you know?
So knowing, I'm not sure how long everybody's been in the game, but like obviously Rabbitfoot, who's somebody who's been in the game for that long, would be somebody who's been, like you said, they have defining characteristics. They're the ones who made some of the flavors what they are.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's a lot. That's a really big, I think, a hard comparison. Give me a second on that, because now we're talking. Because we're talking like 4 or 5 years. Like,
there isn't one.
So like, okay, so yeah, correct. I guess that's it, because we're not at. I guess that goes to your point. We're not at that stage yet to where you could compare somebody like that. Now, I do see like players on the horizon, such as like yourself, certainly Brimminghorn. Those guys are, like you said, those guys are putting flavor profiles together like that. They have this one called the Legend of the Norsini, that is based off like the Italian pig butchers and stuff, and it has like juniper berries and like 3 or 4 different other spice adjuncts and 2 or 3 fruit adjuncts in it. I mean, it's just this absolutely mesmerizing flavor combination.
Yeah, he's a magician with that stuff. That's the reason I like John. I mean, I get inspired with the things he does, you know.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess that's a good point. Is I guess I can't see anybody who's quite at that point yet, but I see a lot of people vying for that position.
Yeah, and that's what I think it is. That's why I think it's kind of, I think it's like, and I'll tell you this, man, I mean, it happens all the time, but people see all this and they look at it and they're like, I could do that, I want to start a meadery. I mean, my gosh, I've done presentations on it. I'm probably currently consulting like 15, 20 people that are quote unquote opening a meadery. Some of them have been talking to me for years. Some of them have been talking to me for 2 weeks, but it's a constant influx, and I'm very supportive of it. I help every way I can. But I'm very real too, I mean, I'm real. This stuff is hard, and you're not just going to like open a meadery and sell meat. That doesn't happen. So I think that's just over time, it's going to weed out, people who think it's easy, and then people who put the work in. And then, elevate the game. So yeah, there's definitely people out there that are doing it. Like you mentioned Superstition and, Bee Nectar, Moonlight, they've had great, distribution channels all across the country. Shrams is now getting all over the place. And so it's happening. But I think we're still in the 90s, and I hope so. I hope I'm part of the elevation, and I'm not just riding the wave. I want to be part of the building process. So.
Yeah, definitely. We're definitely running up on about an hour and a half here. I got a few more questions for you, couple rapid fire questions to kind of close out the evening. I appreciate your time today, my man. Anybody out there who, if you haven't already figured out who Tony is at Manic Meadery, go give them a follow on all their social media pages. Sign up on their website to potentially join their bottle club if ever any slots opened up. Buy from them as much as you can, support them. And another kind of just side note from that, I don't know if you guys have any bottle of Perseverance left yet, but anybody out there who knows who Upper Reach Meadery is, formerly Haymaker Meadery, those cats suffered some serious damage during hurricane last year, and these cats here at Manic had a batch going, kind of a collab thing, and are donating all the money and proceeds from that particular flavor to the fund to rebuild Upper Reach Meadery. So anybody out there who's interested in really helping out 2 cats at once, go buy a bottle of that Perseverance.
Yeah, we got a few bottles left, and I'm looking forward to selling that out and getting that check to Upper Reach, man. They're good people.
Yeah, definitely. So, all right, man, I got this last little part here I called Shut Up TK, where I just kind of rapid fire some questions at you, kind of goofy, and see what we got going on here. See, what's the first thing you do in the morning when you get up?
Look for coffee.
Hot or cold?
Whatever is available.
Do you use your blinker?
I'll say that again.
Do you use your turn signal?
Yes. Religiously.
Cat person or religiously. Cat person or dog person?
Both. Mostly dog.
Does pineapple belong on a pizza?
Sure, I'll eat it.
Toilet paper, does it hang over the front or over the back, or does it not matter?
I don't really care, but the front keeps my knuckles from scraping the paint.
Oh, what's your favorite Girl Scout cookie?
I think they all suck.
Ooh, that's a first. Uh, what's your favorite breakfast cereal?
Honey bunches of oats.
If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
To have infinite superpowers on demand.
Of course. What's the worst job you've ever had?
Oh, oh gosh. Now that's rapid fire. That's tough. I don't think I've had a worse job, man. I like working. I like learning stuff. So I made a choice to be in every position I was, and it's always better than other people have it in other places in the world. So I'm blessed to have all the jobs I've had, man.
What was your first car?
As a Oldsmobile Delta 88.
Oh, wow. Okay. How about the first beer you drank?
Miller High Life, I'm assuming, because that's what my dad drank.
Burgers or tacos?
If it's the right taco, like we're talking Southern San Diego style or up
Street
here in
tacos. Yeah, buddy.
Chicago, I'm going taco.
Nice. Pool or darts?
Pool. Can I say
My name
disc
is
golf?
Tony. Hey, your choice, man. My name is Tony Qualls, and if I wasn't a mead maker, I would be a
A pain in the ass.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Tony, for being here tonight. Again, everybody, please go follow Tony on all his social medias, Manic Meadery on Instagram, Facebook. If you're trying to get into their bottle club, no guarantees on that. Go give them a sign up on their website as well. And if you see any of their stuff on the shelf, grab it. Order from what you can online. Be no shipper, because these guys do that in some, 38, 40 some odd states or some whatever was available.
Yeah, I think 41 or something like that, yeah.
Yeah, there's still a few holdouts that don't want to join the revolution. But thank you very much again for being here, Tony. I appreciate it a lot. And go give me a follow on my YouTube page, TK and Drinks. If you're not here already following me here, I'd appreciate that. A subscribe here. Again, Facebook, all that stuff as well. And man, I look forward to talking to you in the future. I hope we can get another one of these interviews in sometime.
Yeah, you bet, my man. I really appreciate you having me on. It was fun hanging out with you at Mazer, and looking forward to the future of Mead, man. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Appreciate it, my man. Have a good evening. Everybody else, have a good evening tonight as well. Talk to y'all later.
Cheers.
Cheers.